It's super hard in the creative industry, especially when you see everybody doing the biggest commercials, biggest TV and movie. You're like, I want to do that. I want to do that. But like, you also have to make a living.
Yeah.
You also just have to, this is my job as a cinematographer, DP, or like a camera operator, or just running a video production company. And I always align to that in terms of there's always space for the fun stuff. Like my style is like very, you know, like whatever that is. But you know, people know.
You know, the classic.
Yeah, whatever that is. In Asia, Europe, even in the South as well, with like Brazilian, anything. Like they're so out there. Their ideas are wild. Like the VFX is crazy because they push it, right? And with like our Western style of advertising, it's very safe.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Unfold podcast. Today, I'm joined by
Zachary Guy.
We got Zach back on the podcast. My name is Juanjo. And, you know, last time we had you on the podcast, we had a very, very interesting conversation.
Yeah, we talked about, I guess, where I started and kind of my views and my journey and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
And I remember this one thing that stuck with me a lot.
Okay.
And I wanted to follow up with you about it. And it was kind of your take on intentionality, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe let's just briefly touch up on that again.
Yeah.
I remember you said that you were doing like a lot of videography work, a lot of content work for clients here and there. And then you told me that when you saw what Connect Productions were doing.
Connect. Oh, yeah.
Jason.
I didn't even know that was them, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, Jason and Justin, they were making some content together. And you saw specifically the intentionality behind their work. And that really inspired you. What do you mean by that?
Intention is, I feel like, one of the biggest things when it comes to cinematography, directing, anything really, production design, anything when it comes to creating a world. You know what I mean? Like in filmmaking, commercial wise, or movies, films, TV, you are making something that is maybe super realistic or beyond reality. And I feel like with commercials, that's the world we're living in terms of beyond reality. And you have to be intentional with everything that you're doing. Every single thing that is in a shot should have intention. And I feel like that's what a lot of people and filmmakers are missing, even as cinematographers, that like you have to be intentional with everything. And once I started seeing like Justin and Jason, what they were doing with shots had intentions. Like shots were, you know, blocked out. Things were certainly said. Lighting was a different mood just to convey some more emotion. Just there's so many little details that just have so much intention that bring a piece to being something that, like, you know, you could say that's 50% all the way to 90. And then once you start fine tuning those little details, that takes you to 100% or even more.
Yeah. I remember back when I was doing more videography work as well. I would approach jobs very, how do I say it? Kind of like Rambo style. Very run and gun.
Just walk in,
right?
figure it out.
You just walk in. You don't even really know what the space is going to look like. And you're just like, okay, let's do this. Yeah. Right. I assume that you were like that once as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. You walk into a space and it's like you found your system, you rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, do the same moves, do the same things.
And what did that system look like for you?
Oh, for me, like, are you talking about in videography?
Yeah.
I mean, I shot a lot of things, but I'd say like when you said of like walking in Rambo style and just figuring it out, it was a lot of like event work, and I did a lot of wedding receptions as well, just the dance parts. And then I would just walk in, I would know exactly what shots I would need. And then I would just do that, and then I would make the same edit with different music. And obviously it worked for the company and everything and what I was doing, but it was just like, yeah, you turn your brain off, right? And then like there's intention to make money. There's intention to, you know, it is what it is. It's a wedding reception. You can't get it. It's not going to be bigger than that.
Yeah, so it's not that deep.
It's not that deep. I'm not going to. I'm going to try and I'm going to show up, but like, there's a ceiling there. I'm there to catch a check. I'm there to, you know, act professionally and do my job. But yeah, that's about it. Like there's only so much intention you can do with that.
Totally. Yeah, I remember back in the day, I also wanted to do cooler things with the videography jobs I was getting. But like you said, there's a certain ceiling that you hit. You can't really make something deeper than it already is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and then it's just like I feel like at that point you can relate with this. You're balancing your needs as a creative in terms of expanding, and then the needs of whoever your customer is, clientele. They're just looking for social content that they're just going to blast online, and then you're looking to upgrade your portfolio and be more intentional for it. It's going to take more time, and it's going to take time away from whatever that content looks like.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a balance between finding those clients that you can be more creative and you can expand that, but it's super hard to do. And that's where spec comes in, right?
Yeah. Well, tell me more about when you made that change, when you realized that your projects were lacking that intentionality and you wanted to approach something with more purpose. What was that first project like for you that you felt good about?
I felt good about. Oof. So I remember last time we talked, we already told this story about what I was doing and everything looked cool because I was doing a bunch of car videos and stuff. And then I worked on with Justin and Jason, but like to give even another project that I'm like, ooh, this was cool. It was a project that we did with Justin and Jason knew her as well. And it was Jen, a trainer. And I feel like this was like a really cool project. And this is the first time I actually used my FX3 as well, because there was a lot of intention behind it. First, it was access. Like, what do we have access to? Jen is a personal trainer, and she had access to a space, as well as she was running a program that we had access to a rooftop gym on a parking lot. So we're like, cool. All right, what can we do with this? And then kind of work backwards as a story, because it was like, rush. We have access. She only has 1 day left of this gym. So we shot a bunch of stuff on the gym, and then we're like, okay, how can we figure this out later? And at the time we're using a Sony FX3 and an A7S III, my Ronin M, and then we're using a G Master 24-70 and on one prime lens, like a 20 mil.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's when we started playing with interesting lighting. That's where I started using my Titan tubes as well. And then I got to be a lot more intentional with what I was doing. Camera movements, lighting, just mood, tone, and everything that we're trying to push. But at the same time, we're trying all this different stuff, but we didn't have a story.
Yeah.
We didn't know what was going on. We just had access, right? And I feel like once we just got a bunch of cool shots, then Justin and Jason reworked the story, and they're like, okay, now we need these two scenes. We need her just training by herself in like an outdoor environment, and like something that represents of like the early morning grind, and then her training somebody because that's important to her, because that's the gym, right? And then we kind of reverse engineered of what intention was and how to really plan that out. And then once we put it together and I was editing it, and we went over multiple times with the edit, and this was the first time we worked with a colorist. That was Kevin Wu, and he was at, I forgot where he was at now, but he's at Studio Feather. But he was basically in the start of his coloring career, and then we're like, hey, we have $500. Can you do this? And he's like, yeah, no problem. And we're like, what? You? Right? So that was like a whole thing where it's just like we tried that process as well.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was amazing, and it was like super rewarding because it turned out not how we intended, but it turned out to something with intention.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me when I started doing like an actual commercial, I was pretty blown away by the pre-production that goes into it.
It's huge.
Because it was something that I was always taught in school. It's like, you have to do the pre-production. But for me, it was always like, oh, this is 20% of my grade for this class, and I need to do, it would always be like a group project.
Yeah, it was like,
Yeah, I gotta do the shot list and the lighting diagram. Okay. And it's just like a grade for me. But actually like doing it, I think the biggest thing is not doing it, right? And then going into a production and being like, huh? Everyone's like, so what are we doing here? And you're like, you tell me.
yeah.
And everyone's like, what?
You're the gaffer. Like, aren't you? Yeah, throw some lights up. You know, you know what I want, right?
And they're like, what?
No.
But anyways, that was the biggest thing for me, realizing how much of the work, how much intention is actually discovered within pre-production.
Oh, yeah, it's
right?
huge.
So when you approach pre-production nowadays, what have you found is like very helpful?
I feel like now, like pre-production is like I'm 75-80% of the work is done there. Like it's huge, even as a cinematographer, and just aligning with teams and like dialing in my process, especially the last like 2 years, that would be like I've been diving into heavily.
Yeah.
So it just all starts with like, there's a whole blueprint that you can follow. But the main thing is like, if we're talking about intention, is what am I shooting? What is this whole project? Like, go really big picture. Where is it supposed to be seen? What's the client? Who's the intention? Like all of that. And I'm like, okay, for example, if I'm shooting like a grocery store commercial.
Sure.
Okay. And it's supposed to be seen on television. Okay. So this automatically tells me that, I can't do anything too crazy. I'm not going to do slow shutter or have like a moody lighting setup or anything.
You're like doing like a banana around it.
Yeah, right. It's going to be, statics, dollies, and it's going to be very high lifted.
Yeah.
It's going to be low contrast ratios and everything. Then I'm already aligned with that. And obviously, depending on the creative treatment, it's going to feel lit, right? And then I'm like, okay, now it's just aligning with the director and aligning with the client or whoever you're doing, that sets you up for the entire process. And if you do that first step right, you already are going to make every decision you make with intention, because you're like, remember, I have to go back to here and align with this, right? I already made this big step that I'm going to follow. And then I'm starting doing my lighting diagram, start looking at gear, start looking at like so many other things, and it all comes back to where I started.
Yeah.
And if you start with like the right foot in the right direction and align with the right people, that just makes all the intentions and all the decisions that you're making super easy. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the conversation. I wanted to invite you to check out our new course, the Pre-Production Playbook. This is my entire pre-production process, all the way from director alignment to the day before your shoot. Check out the link in the description to find out more, and let's get back to the conversation.
I had a conversation with Jason, and this is a little off topic from what we're talking about today, but I was having a conversation with Jason on a previous episode, and he was telling me that, the type of work we do, it's not always going to be like the super cool, shiny, like Nike ad, the whatever's. Like oftentimes you're going to have to do those like corporate jobs.
All the time.
And when you do those, I feel like a lot of people right now will still be doing those as well.
Oh, yeah.
And that might be like the main thing that they do. But when you have to do those, how do you still find joy within those productions?
That's a good question. Okay, so guys, 90% of the work we do are commercial content where it's just like lifestyle stuff, ads that you see on Instagram and everything like that. And then also corporate jobs where we're just doing talking heads on backdrops and stuff, or just need to do capture for Sportsnet or something like that. And then, there's like the other 10% where it's just, I get hired on as a DP for something that's like super commercial, right? Obviously that number is fluctuating as, time goes on and everything like that, as like I make steps in my career as well as tenfold. But what pays the bills is that stuff. Yeah. Right. And sorry, going back to your question is, how do I find fun in it?
Yeah. Like, what are some little things that you might do?
No, it's just like, you have to approach it as your job. I know it's super hard in the creative industry, especially when you see everybody doing the biggest commercials, biggest TV and movie. You're like, I want to do that. I want to do that. But like, you also have to make a living. Yeah. You also just have this is my job as a cinematographer, DP, or like a camera operator, or just running a video production company. And I always align to that in terms of there's always space for the fun stuff. There's always a project that will come along that will, reignite that spark. But when it comes to those corporate jobs and stuff like that, I still have a lot of fun. I remember a couple months ago, Jason and I, as well as this other colleague we work with all the time, Andrew, we were doing this travel job, and it was backdrops, right? Sure. Yeah. Backdrops and everything like that. And then I'm like, before I enter the project or before what I'm doing, if like you or Jason, you came to me like, hey, we're doing this really boring corporate job. And, I'm like, I'm not going to approach it like, that's an insult to my career. Do you know who I am? That's crazy. Yeah. That's actually crazy, right?
I'm Zachary Guy tenfold.
No, right? And it's just like, you have to be, and then I told myself there, I'm like, this is a great opportunity to try new things, right? And it's the little things in terms of like challenging yourself to make it fresh, right? It was a travel job. And then we obviously brought in our own kit and cameras and everything like that and a few lights, but we had to rent them in New York, right? So it was a challenge to me of like, how can I make the most commercially looking nice backdrop interview setup with a 24-70 and FX3 as well as a B cam, and then renting a bunch of stuff, right? So it's all these kind of like experiences that I've all had in my head in terms of just lighting things. And I'm like, it's just a 3-person crew. So everybody's doing everything, but I was mainly handling the gear and everything like that. And that excites me because it was, one, low stakes, because it's just like setting up a backdrop and everything like that. And then I'm like, looking in the room and in the environment, it was a tough one to light because it's so small. We're dealing with so many different things. And then, you know, having a plan come together, because I got pictures of the room and everything like that. Then I'm like, okay, we need A, B, C, and D, and E, F, G. And then I'm like, how can I build a versatile lighting kit to actually do that? And then, am I renting the right equipment? Am I doing all these things? And then once we got to the location, we picked up all the gear. I rented out the perfect amount of equipment. I could have used a little bit more, but it, you know, it felt good. I'm like, oh, this looks great.
You're like using everything.
I'm using everything, and then I had to do like a booklight setup that was like so jank and ratchet, but I'm like, this is fun, right? And then when it came down to it, it was just shooting and being professional and everything like that. But like, I enjoy that, and you have to make the most of it, right? And it's obviously not the most like, oh my God thing, but it comes back to how you should approach every project, no matter the scale. I align with the intention of what this is supposed to look like, who the client is, where it's going to be facing, and then what the director wants to go with. And I approach it if it was $1 million commercial that I was shooting for 6 days somewhere else, you know what I mean? So it's, you have to enter the same process, any project, one with a positive attitude, and two with that same blueprint that I was talking about.
That's a great mentality.
Oh, yeah.
Well, jumping back to the original topic of this episode, when you approach the pre-production table, the director comes with the ideas.
Yep.
As a cinematographer, you also have to come with your own ideas, right? Maybe in like a different way, but you still have to have kind of a bank of things to rely on.
Yeah.
Right. So when it comes to that, when a director comes to you with a project, they describe this look that they want. How do you find those images in your head? What do you reference to nail that look that directors want from you?
So I feel like any cinematographer or anybody in film has a bank of references of stuff that they like, just in their head and everything like that. And it's just like, I constantly find inspiration all the time, especially with social media, YouTube, things, just videos I watch, people I follow. And I know that if you guys watch a YouTube channel, everybody's like, oh, he uses FrameSet. I'm like, I use FrameSet as a tool to get there to the references. But what I actually use is like Vimeo and then like just Instagram, and I just save everything that I like, right? And then once I have this like literally library in my head, and then a director will say a word, a phrase, or something that he says like, oh, I want it to look like this. And I'll obviously ask questions to probe exactly what I need, because a director, if you're a director, you come to me as a director of photography for execution.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want it to look like this. How can we do that? And I'm like, okay, we can have these options. I'm a creative problem solver. That is my job as a director of photography, right? So if I have this constant research that I'm doing with all these different ideas, especially the stuff I like, as soon as a director says something, I'll be like, I remember this one, then I'll find back, cross-reference that, and find a bunch of references that look like that as well. But if it's in the situation where I don't really necessarily have everything, it's just do your research. Like the director has like these 3 key phrases that they want, and that's what I'll do. I use tools like FrameSet. I'll go on Instagram. I'll look on Vimeo. Then I'll look for like, oh, do you have any inspirations as a director, like the styles that you like? And they'll say another director or even like projects, and I'll be like, okay, take those, find something similar, even more. And that's where my ideas really come in. Yeah.
Looking back on your bank of references, do you see like a pattern of things that you like?
Oh, yeah.
Well, what are those things?
I mean, if anybody's like followed Tenfold or me for a while, everybody knows like what my style is. I like big wides, slow shutter, high paced, like big on sound design, big on movement and moments and everything like that. And also slowing things down a lot when that emotional beat strikes. Obviously, you know, you mature with your style and everything, especially with the market being so flooded with that specific style as well. But yeah, I like if you were, you know, to perfectly describe what I like to shoot, it's those fast paced commercials, usually in the fashion realm that, yeah, actually it's hard. Not necessarily fashion. I would just say like product and people.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot of overlap.
there's a lot of overlap when it comes to that stuff because
Yeah.
I also I love a really good car commercial too. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? There's it's that fast, quick cut style because it's just I feel like my case is very specific because I come from an editing background who moved into cinematography. So I always thinking about the edit first. I'm always thinking about inserts. I'm always thinking about transitions. I'm always thinking about those aspects first.
Yeah.
And it's just my style is very, whatever that is. But, people know.
You know, the classic.
Yeah, whatever that is. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird because, as you develop, I've gotten into more commercial styles where it's just very wide, very lit, very unnatural, right? And that's what I'm getting more into, right? I feel like I have two worlds where it's that really gritty, almost like New York style, and then that really high key commercial that's associated with those big looks, wide lenses, big faces and stuff. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the conversation, and I want to invite you guys to check out Set Memory, which is a collection of pre-production documents, director's templates, editing assets, really anything to speed up your workflow. Check out the link in the description below, and let's get back to the conversation.
Where do you think that comes from? That wide lens look? Because I feel like that's almost relatively a new thing as well.
Oh yeah, I feel like advertising has shifted, and then you have to kind of get with the trends as well. I don't know necessarily where that came from. I've always just loved wide lenses, and I feel like the most recent thing, or the first thing that I would associate with that, is the McDonald's commercial I did with my partner Sophia.
Yeah.
Right. It's just there was a wide lean-ins and stuff like that, and obviously that came from her and what she wanted. And then I'm we also had brought up this conversation of what do you want to shoot and what do you want to, what this to look like. And I was always getting into those wide things that I didn't really have an opportunity to shoot it with, right? And then she gave me that opportunity, right? So
yeah, it is pretty crazy the influence that you've had, even on myself personally.
Yeah,
because I have noticed that if you don't have those wide lens shots, it doesn't really feel like a commercial.
Yeah,
because I went to film school, so I come from a film background. But everything, my favorite lens is the 85.
Yeah, compressed, long, yeah.
Exactly. But I was watching the most recent spec I did for Barbaria.
And that was you started off with a wide.
One wide, and then it goes to super
tight.
We use I think maybe the 90 best bid, and then we use the 70 to 200 super long lens, right?
Oh yeah, for the outside shots.
Yeah. So I was watching back at it, and I'm this feels like almost a TV show. It doesn't really feel like a commercial. I don't know. I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. I don't know if the wide lens makes commercial looks, or if commercial looks always use wide lenses, or what it is. But
yeah, it very depends on what you're doing, right? Because I feel like that's a narrative commercial style. And then even the Adidem project that we shot on Monday, that was a mixture of lenses. I used wide, I used Optimo 24 to 290, and I was at the 290 end, right? And to answer your question, when you're doing dialogue and stuff like that, and you're tracking people's movements, you're gonna use a wide lens because there's a story that you have to tell, and then you are also watching it. Right, I remember having the conversation with Chad, the director of that project for the Adidem that we're working on right now, and then he was explaining to me what he wanted in the shot list and how he wanted it to feel, and then I would ask specific questions. I'm are we watching here or are we in it?
Yeah.
Right? Is this a big moment where the viewer has to be in it to feeling what they're feeling, or are we observing? Right, and that goes with lens choices. If you're in it and you want the emotion and everything to hit, you're going to use something 35 and below. But if you're watching, that's what you like, right? So you're more narrative, you're back. You're still experiencing what's happening, but there's a different feeling to it. Yeah.
I never even clocked that.
Yeah.
It's even the intentionality behind the lenses, eh?
Oh yeah, because in an ideal world, I'd shoot everything on a 21 and a 40. Just swap between those two, right? But then I have to align with the director, right? In this moment, for example, if there's a conversation, in this moment, okay, say we're having a conversation between two people.
Sure.
And then we're obviously at the podcast, we have a wide and two tights.
Yeah.
Right? And I could put a camera here and this would be the very commercial option where I'm super low, maybe on a 21, and it's a conversation, and then I do a whip pan between both of us. And like the conversation would be very tight. It'd be like, huh? Well, you said this, and like there would be like less words. That's a commercial. But then if it's like an actual conversation that has like story and narrative to more, that doesn't have to be as very snappy. You can put a camera back there or even back there, and then you can move with intention between the conversation with a longer lens.
Well,
right? But yeah, like, whoa.
This conversation is changing my life.
Right? But like with the first example, that's quick, snappy. You know, a conversation is going to happen 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But if it's like a narrative or something more where you need to get more, and it's going to be more the actor's performance, that's going to be like maybe a 20-second shot instead. Right? And that dictates what I'm going to choose: camera, lenses, lighting, everything. Right? And yeah, and that's intention.
This is crazy. This is actually crazy.
But yeah, I never really get to say this out loud because this is what I'm thinking on my end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is my pre-production process. This is my breakdown of, you know, really how to get inside a director's head to really get what they want. Because there's a lot of times when I'm working with multiple people, they're like, how do you know to do that? How did you know that I wanted that? And I'm like, you told me. And then I just broke it down in my own language, and then I figured it out. Then I also gave you options. Like, we were doing this for the last 2 weeks. We just didn't show up and say, actually, I want something else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yeah, it's just constantly realignment. Like, hey, based off the conversation we had yesterday, I came up with these a bunch of references, and I think we should go in this direction based off what you said. You know, just like reiterate, hey, this is what you said. This is my interpretation. And obviously nudge them in the right direction as well. Because even with the Adidas project and working with Chad, he's leaning on me in terms of like, hey, I know that you're a really good editor. You're also a really good cinematographer, and you understand how these things were cut together. So like, this is what I want, but I'm going to lean on you. And then I kind of nudge in the right direction of like, I like this, really like your idea here. To execute even more, I think we should go with this direction in terms of just angle and just feeling, as well as what the actor's saying. So it's like a collaboration at that point. And then on the other hand, if you're working with something that like has super experience, they're like, I know exactly, I want this, and then you just do that. Right?
Would you say at this point, when you're having those conversations with people, it almost comes to you instinctually, like you already know what emotion is associated with what look?
Yeah, I'm pretty snappy with that because it goes all with experience. You know, I've been doing this for 7 years, and then actually as a DP for maybe the last 3 or 4. Can't keep track anymore. But like, it's just rinse and repeat with every project that you do. Videography sizers, big commercials. It's just like, it's the same process, and then you're building on that catalog of things. And like with just working in a production company and then like shooting literally every project that Tenfold has done, and then being allowed to be in that space, it's just like, I fast tracked that so far because with all the specs that we've done with everything, I remember the first year that we worked together, we probably shot maybe like 20 to 30 commercials.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Damn.
And then like everybody would say, even to me personally, like, yeah, this is the best one. And it would be constantly adding on to that because we just did so much spec, and that taught me so fast because I was in it. You know what I mean? And then we figured out, I'm like, oh, you should do a lot more from pre-production, not just kind of figure it out on set, because that's what we were doing all the time. But no, we learned so much, and then we're kind of in this, you know, feel like we're in this in-between where we're working on a lot of big projects, but it's like frustrating because we're dealing with what the client necessarily wants and not necessarily what we want. Because a lot of people come to us for projects of like, we like this one, you do that, right? And then there's a lot of clients that come to us of like, yeah, we like this one, can you interpret into this? And then we do that, and we're like, actually, can we just go with what we did in the past? And we're like, then why? You know, why?
Why are you hitting me up then?
You know, like, okay, we could do it, but why wasn't that communicated at the start?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like companies, especially in Canada, I remember us having this conversation with Sophia too, was like, advertising in Canada is so, like, everybody's scared. Like, no one's afraid to like push the boundaries. But what I've been doing recently is watching a lot of commercials outside of Canada, even like the West, like in America. If you watch things like
in Europe.
In Europe, like I'm talking beyond that, like in Asia,
Yeah,
Europe, even in the South as well, with like Brazilian, anything. Like they're so out there. Their ideas are wild. Like the VFX is crazy because they push it, right? And with like our Western style of advertising, it's very safe. You know, put this like this. Oh, can you twist that one macaroni noodle in this KD ad? You know what I mean? Because it has to look like that. Well, I'm like, no, you know what I mean? But that's advertising. You know what I mean?
You think it has to do with like the tighter and tighter budgets?
Oh, of course.
Like clients are like not trying to take any risks anymore.
Yeah, because they're like, okay, we had to keep the same budget as last year. Let's just do the same thing but different. Not like let's do it different, like as in like let's push something totally. Like there's companies that are obviously doing that, but in terms of the like the bigger budgets and you know what are people fighting for, it's just like.
So for jumping back a little bit, but for maybe newer cinematographers, maybe people trying to jump from the videography space into more of an intentional cinematography space.
Of course.
Do you have any tangible and also intangible pieces of advice for people that they can do right now to start developing that instinct?
Okay. Tangible. Practice. Practice, 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 practice. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If it's any shoot, even like doing stuff at home, that's the biggest learning thing. I remember I just watched a YouTube video yesterday and I forgot the name. It's a British guy, but you probably see his videos all the time. And he was talking about catch lights. Yeah. Because I feel like that's something that even I struggle with sometimes. And then he was talking about like the intentionality with like subtle detail. And he was putting like, he just did this moody scene where it's top lit. And then he's like, oh, this looks great, but we don't have a catch light. Right. So he's like, what happened if I put it right beside the camera? Right. It's directly in the center of his eye. And this looks more intense. This looks like he's looking directly into your soul as a viewer. Sure. This hits. Yeah. Right. And then he's like, what happened if I put it at the bottom? And then that little change changed the entire emotion of the scene of a catch light. Right. And he did that at home. And then that's something I learned off of his video. I'm like, holy, like that's crazy. And like I saw it and I felt it. I'm like, that's what they do in movies. That's what they do in everything. And this guy's just practicing at home. So as soon as like he has the opportunity, it's going to be like 1 in 100 chance that the director's like, I want this look and I want to feel this. He's like, I did that exact thing at home. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it takes a while too. And it's tough because I know shooting by yourself, even at home, is so annoying. It's so annoying. And I've done it so many times just to test things. And I do it with Sophia even to try different things as well. We were recently on this Thrifty commercial. And then there's a specific shot where we had to follow the chip and it had to be dipped through this 7-layer dip. And then we're like, damn. Yeah, it was crazy. And we're like, okay, is it better if we approach it like this, like the camera tracks back, or are we pushing forward and we're behind the chip? Do we go from the side? And I'm like, we just have to try it. So it was freezing outside and we did it on our patio. And then we set up this whole thing, Sony FX3 slider, chip dip and everything like that. And that saved the scheduling of the shoot because we weren't figuring it out on set. Yeah. We just didn't show up and be like, oh, okay, like we can try this how we think it looks. And then the first time we tried it, when we were doing the previs and everything, it was just like, if we tried that, we would have been screwed. Yeah. But we figured it out, and then we sent a frame I linked, sent it to client, and they were like, we like this option better. Right. And that is just, obviously we're going back to, you know, the Rolodex of bringing experience and everything like that. I know how to shoot that chip shot now. And if we need to apply it to anything else, it's very rare. Right. And it's just, experience is the best tangible piece of advice. And to get that experience, you have to practice and you have to make mistakes.
It's not an overnight thing.
It's not an overnight thing. And especially people look at, you know, the work that I put out, especially on Instagram and YouTube and everything like that. And they're like, oh, this guy never misses. Let me tell you, I've probably missed about 80% of the time, you know?
Wayne Gretzky, baby.
Yeah, right? And then it's just like, you just have to keep practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing. And like every shoot, I still make mistakes, but I still learn something that I can apply to another thing, right? And it's just like, this is a really small and really, you know, also big example as well, because the last shoot we were on the Adidim one, I'm like, there's this exterior shot that we need. And it's the basically hero shot of the entire piece. And we're outside, there's sun. Okay, we have to shoot in the beginning of the day because I know where the sun's going. But I'm like, am I going to have enough output? So I'm like, last minute, I'm like, I need two 1200Ds as my key light. And then I also looked in the truck and they only had like full grid and stuff like that ate up a lot of light. And I'm like, shit, I need to add in like a silent grid or something like that, just from experience. Because I've been in situations where I'm like, oh, magic cloth is the best. To give you reference, magic cloth is like, if anybody's looking for like a soft source, they're like, oh, magic cloth. But also magic cloth takes up 4 to 5 stops of output. So I'm like, no,
Can't do that.
you can't do that, because then it just eats up all your lights and you're just left with like nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need something that has 1 to 2 stops that'll spread it out, but still have that punch, right? But if I didn't make that mistake, I wouldn't have known that. I would have made another mistake. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Make those mistakes.
Make those mistakes and don't be afraid, and kind of move on. And that's the biggest thing. Now, intangible advice.
How do you get that switch in your brain to be like, not everything I did this a lot.
Yeah, okay.
I would watch something and be like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Next video, this is cool. Next video, this is cool. Right? But you can't do that, because then your brain just starts getting filled with a bunch of
Cool ideas that you kind of mismatch into one.
even like cool ideas. Like maybe I just thought it was cool because of this specific reason, whatever other reason. But you need to develop a look and to develop the specific intention behind what your work represents. You need to make decisions of, this is cool, but it doesn't fit within my look.
Okay, so I know exactly what, this is. And the greatest piece of advice is that context is everything, right? So if you're watching a video and you think, oh, that's really cool, and you're only seeing the finished product,
Yeah.
right? How about everything that went in behind that, the planning, intentionality, what that's supposed to be and everything. And then obviously you look at so many things and you're just scrambled because you're looking at so many cool things. And then, this goes back to like looking at yourself and we're like, I'm not making cool shit. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I feel like if you look at yourself as a cinematographer and then go back to thinking about context and just really, where am I going with this? Because I preach this a lot in the YouTube videos, and it's just like, when you're ever aligning with anything, or even just motivating or whatever, lighting, cinematography, movement, like context is key, because it keeps you grounded. It keeps you pushing everything with intention of going back to what the key thing is that you're trying to do, right? And I feel like this is a big career advice as well, because you look at somebody, a piece that is super cool and everything like that, and then that person's been in the game for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That person grew up with a camera in his hand, or like had somebody in the industry or something like that, or even just grinded it out for that long. Then I'm here 7 years into my career and I'm like, oh, that seems so far away. But, to catch up, it'd take 13 years.
Yeah.
Right? And then also, look where you came from, look where you're going. There's just so many little things that you can go, and I feel like context is key for that.
Okay, great. Well, I think it's been a great conversation so far.
Yeah, fantastic.
And if you blow my mind anymore, I'm not gonna be able to do the outro for this video. So that was the end of the episode for today. Thank you guys for listening to this. If you listen to this all the way through, leave us a comment. Describe to us how you would describe your own style.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you guys. And then also, if you guys want to hear anything me specifically talking about, let us know in the comments below, because we read everything. So thanks.
Yeah. Thank you again, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.
Peace.